Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Male Perspective. I am your host, Lana Reid, and today I have with me author Robert Crown. He has written a book, Suffering Ends When Awakening Begins. Robert, welcome to the show today. Thank you for hanging out with me.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate
Awesome,
it.
awesome. Now, I got to be quite honest with you. I was reading through your information, getting ready for today's show, and like my jaw dropped at first when I read the first line, and then my jaw dropped a little bit more when I read the second line, and then the third. I was like, "How could anybody survive all of this? It's just amazing." But we're going to try to get through all of your. It's just phenomenal. Your story is just anybody else would have thrown their hands up and said, forget it, I give up. But you just kept on coming back, and a true story of adversity. So let me start at the beginning. The very first thing I read about you is that at the age of 11, your mother devised this premeditated plot. Could you just start there for me, please? I need to hear that.
All right, sure. So when I was 11 years old, back in April 1973, if I dare to say that, my mother, we got up for school like any other day, but my mom said on this day we weren't going to go to school. We were going to go see a show at the old Chicago amphitheater.
Okay.
No school for an 11-year-old? Woohoo, right? So we were excited. So my mom said, I'm going to go out and get gas for the car, and then when I get home, then we're going to go. My mom got gas for the car, came in, closed the overhead garage door, came in through the basement, went upstairs to the kitchen, and then she asked us if we wanted some ice cream. So my sisters went up there and got the ice cream, and then I went up there and I looked at my mom and looked at my ice cream and looked at my mom again. I said, Mommy, what are these little crushed up white things in my ice cream with an S on them? And she said, oh, that S, that just means you're special. Well, I knew I was a good kid, so I never gave a second thought about it. But the S meant S for Somnix, for sleeping pills. So then I just went downstairs to eat my ice cream with my sisters. In a few moments, my mom came downstairs, and she had a blanket draped over her arm, and she had a box of nails and a hammer. And I said, what's that for, Mommy? And she said, as she was nailing the blanket up against the doorway, she said, it's a surprise for your daddy when he gets home from work today. And I said, what surprise, Mommy? She said, oh, you'll see. So my mom finished nailing the blanket up against the doorway and then went out the basement door, went in the garage, started the car, and then went out the back access door. So in a little while, I could start smelling all the fumes coming in, right? And then I could taste the carbon monoxide in my mouth, and it coated the inside of my nose. My eyes were burning. I said, Mommy, I think the car's warmed up now. Then it was just started billowing in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was no response from my mom. So I started to feel woozy and sick. And this virgin thought entered my mind at 11, and it said, this is what death feels like. You're going to die. And I wasn't scared. I was calm, and I just closed my eyes and went to sleep for what I thought was the last time. So then at some point, I heard this voice in my head, as clear as you and I are talking right now, that said, get up and go for the door. Go for the door.
Uh-huh.
So I just was obedient, and I stood up. And I was intoxicated by the fumes at this point. My knees were wobbling. And I made my way to the middle of the floor and there to the basement floor. And there my sisters were lying basically lifeless on the floor at this time. And I thought I should stop and help them. And then I had a second thought, if I do, I don't have much strength left. It's going to be the death of us all. So I thought the best thing to do is just go for the door. So I finally made it to the door, up the steps, and then fiddling with the access door, finally got it open, and just standing on the threshold of life and death there, trying to get some of that fresh spring clean air in my lungs. And with every ounce of energy I had left, I just tried to yell for help, but nothing, I mean, it's 1973. Everybody's in school. Nobody's around. And so I figured I'm going to die if somebody doesn't hear me. So one last time, I just went, help. I mean, it wasn't loud enough to wake a sleeping baby.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, I felt like this piercing grip around both my arms, and somebody began to shake me violently, screaming, "Robert, Robert!" And I couldn't make out the voice, and it was hard to see because my eyes were blurry. And then I was able to focus my eyes, and I realized it was my mother. And then, like, a flurry of thoughts just raced through my head, like, where have you been? Why did you leave me? Why did you let
Mm-hmm.
this happen to me? And then the grave reality set in, like, is she going to finish me off?
Mm.
But she obviously snapped out of it after that, called my dad, and the rest is history, as they say.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm assuming mom was going through some, I don't know, maybe postpartum depression, or I mean, was something going on there?
Yeah, she had a nervous breakdown, and she, with my mother-in-law, my dad's mother, they didn't get along well, and it just kind of pushed her over the edge, and she thought she'd take it out on my dad by getting to us kids. So
Oh, wow. Wow.
yeah.
So after that, what mom was still
Mom went to a hospital for a few months to
okay.
get some treatment, but for
Okay.
us kids, no counseling, no therapy, no nothing. Just
Okay.
kind of swept it under the rug and just went on with our lives.
Okay.
So,
So your sister, how many sisters was it at the time?
two sisters, two sisters. Yeah,
Okay. All right. All right. Just amazing. Overwhelming. And you were the oldest, 11?
I was the middle boy. Yeah, middle child.
That is a doozy of a story.
Yeah, right.
And that's a doozy of a start. And like I said, that is just the first bullet point in what we call
Yeah.
Robert's life of adversity that he's gotten over. Is mom still with us today?
Mom is, and mom is doing well, and we get
Okay.
along great. Yeah,
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. And
yeah.
and the sisters do too as well.
Sisters, yeah, they're doing well, and they have their moments, but they're getting along with mom too. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. That's
yeah.
great to hear. That's great to hear. Now let's go to the second uh, bullet point. And I think at this point I would have just been like, I'm done. Just stick a fork in me. I
Right.
can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
But you were a runaway and lived on the streets after being sexually abused, and you got into selling drugs. So this is after the incident with mom, and then we go to this, right?
Right. Yeah,
Mm,
it was so after the incident with mom, my whole life obviously changed. I mean, if your
mm-hmm,
mother doesn't love you,
mm-hmm.
I mean, consciously you're not thinking this, but subconsciously you are, then who loves me, right? So I started to rebel against authority. I started to get into fights. I did poorly in school. I became, disrespectful toward my mom. At that point, 2 years later, my parents got divorced.
Oh,
And then at 15, a friend of mine stayed over at the house one night. We decided we're going to take my mother's car for a spin. And, I didn't have my license, but hey, it'd be fun, right? So we took the car out. We ended up, 7, 8 miles from home and, going up and down these really hilly roads. And I ended up totaling the car out. And it was a pretty vicious accident. And fortunately, me and my friend were allowed to walk away from that accident. And I told my friend, I said, I'm not going home. My mom might kill me. I didn't know what she was going to do. I didn't know. She
yeah,
might have. Who
yeah,
knows, right?
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
wasn't really joking at that time. So with $20 in my pocket from Barrington, Illinois, where the accident occurred, I'd hitchhiked all the way down to Daytona Beach, Florida, and stayed down there. When I got there, I met this guy with a couple of Dobermans at the McDonald's. And he said, "Where's your parents, kid?" And I said, "I don't have my parents." He says, "Oh, you're a runaway, right?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, let me buy you a bus ticket and I'll put you on a bus home. And that way you don't want to be staying down here. You're going to age too quickly." I said, "What are you talking about, age too quickly?" Well, you know, it turned out this guy was like a drug dealer, right? And I
Mm,
should have heeded his advice and took his advice and left, but I had just gotten down there and I didn't want to. I just, came from home. So he ended up taking me in and, I started selling. I was there for a few days a week. He says, if you want to stay here, you're going to have to start earning your keep. And there was a bunch of druggies there. It's like your total 70s, long hair, greasy, slick
Mm-hmm.
down, hippies, freaks, what they call them back then. And so I had to start selling drugs, go down on the boardwalk. He said, just ask anybody who wanted to buy something. And, I got, held up at gunpoint one time, got in a car with some guys that, were sniffing glue and thought they were going to kill me. And, and then all my stuff got stolen, whatever little stuff I had. And one of the guys down on the boardwalk told me to go talk to this other guy. He would help me, but this guy didn't help me. He ended up sexually abusing me a number of times while I was down there. So after about 3 months, I had enough and I went back home.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
that was between 15 and 16 years old.
Yeah, that was at 15 years old, right?
Okay. So you go back home to a warm, loving reception at 16, correct?
Right. Well, actually, it wasn't that bad. I remember my mom picking me up at the airport in this old beater car she had to buy because I destroyed her other one.
Mm-hmm.
And I said the first thing I wanted to do, even though it was in late May, I believed I got back, I wanted to go to school. I wanted to go back into school and try to get some normalcy in my life. But I realized when I got there that it dawned on me what that guy said at the boardwalk there. He said, you're going to age too quickly. And I realized what he said then. It's like all this petty stuff at high school that they talk about and do. And it's like, oh my God, this stuff, I'm way beyond this stuff. It's kind of like, this is ridiculous compared to what I'd just been through. So yeah, I tried to go back to school for a while, but eventually ended up just dropping out.
Okay. Okay. So you dropped out at what age?
I dropped out the following year.
Okay.
I was, well, maybe it was a year and a half. I think I was 17 when I dropped out of school. It was my last year of school I dropped out.
Okay.
So
what did you do with yourself after that?
I got menial jobs, basically just did that. Actually, my last year, the first semester of my last year, my father said if I made the honor roll, he would send me to college. So I really kind of hunkered down. I was in a special ed program because I couldn't study, all of this stuff going on in my head. And and I made the honor roll. And came to my report card, proud as can be, hey, I made the honor roll. I can't wait to go to college. He goes, I never said that. And so he never sent me to college.
Wow.
So I ended up trying to go on my own. And I went for a little while, but I had back then it was grants and stuff worked a little bit differently. And I wasn't fully aware of all of that and how it worked. So I did go somewhere I was able to go, but I wasn't able to stay. I had to come back before even the first semester was over because I ran out of money.
Wow.
So they said they were going to get me a job when I was there. They didn't help me find a job. So it's pretty disappointing, but that's the way things work out, and it's all right.
So at this particular time in your life, with all of the incidents, nobody in the family, no loved one, or was saying, maybe we should get him some therapy, some counseling. Nobody was suggesting that at that point, saying, well, he's went through a lot at this point.
Well, my mother did back a little bit earlier, after when I got back from running away.
Okay.
Maybe about a year after that. But the reason was because I was unruly, and I just kind of did what I wanted. It had nothing to do. So I did go get some help. Actually, she had admitted me into a psych hospital. And they tried to treat me, but they didn't really know what's wrong with them. They didn't know that my mother tried killing me,
Okay.
So it's kind of like, it's kind of like you're treating the symptom instead of the cause. So how effective could it be? And I was unruly in there too. It was like, let's see how many times they can strap Robert down and shoot him up with, with Thorazine or whatever that drug is to calm you down,
Okay.
So,
Okay. So, all righty.
I ended up escaping from there too, by the way. I made a plan and I escaped out of there. So that's how bad it was.
This is not a book. This is a movie. This is.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
This is a movie. All righty. So now we are we are at the point where college didn't work out after all of the other unfortunate happenings in life. And here we are at 19, Robert, and your best friend and girlfriend were killed in a car accident.
Yeah. So after the thing with college was actually, met my girlfriend before college and fell in love for the very first time. And it was great. I was dating her for 10 months. And then in April of 81, I decided I was going to ask her to marry me on her birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And because I never really had that feeling before and somebody really caring about me honestly. So it was a great experience. We got along perfectly. So it was very interesting because we're both up in my room one night. She's always wanted to go up to Wisconsin. You know, the drinking age was a lot, 18 at the time. And we got a call from my best friend who I worked with. And he asked me if I wanted to go to up to Wisconsin with Carol. And we were just hanging around my room, laughing, playing music and having fun. And I went up and asked her. And as soon as I did, the whole mood has changed. And it just became very somber and kind of eerie. And I was looking at her and I had this vibe and I got like goosebumps right now. And I wasn't very aware back then, like I am now, or
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
intuitive. I didn't really understand any of that, what was going on, but I know she did. And reluctantly, she said yes. And I had this feeling I didn't want to ask her about it. I don't know if I was a coward or if I just thought it was some strange coincidence. So we went up to Wisconsin and I sat behind the driver's side on the way up there. We sat in the back seat. We went up with my best friend, another coworker went with us. He sat in the front and we decided to leave early that night, you know, before all the people that were drinking hit the road. And we're all standing around looking for Carol and we can't find her. I ask a woman to check the bathroom. She's not there. And I go outside and I look in the distance at the car and I see her standing at the car with her head down and her hand on the door handle and her strawberry blonde hair like shielding her face. And I had that feeling again, you know, and started going back down. We're just a few miles from home. And then this car pulls on alongside us and taunting us. And would speed up, he'd speed up, would slow down, he'd slow down. Then he swerved into our lane and my best friend missed him. And then he did it again. And this time Bob didn't miss him. The car hit us. We went across the grassy median on the highway and then boom, got smacked by an oncoming car. Carol died instantly. My best friend died. And I woke up in the hospital after surgery a couple of days later.
Mm, 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 mm. Still no therapy after that?
No therapy. Got to sort it out all up here, you know. So yeah, nothing.
My heart hurts. My heart hurts. Well, I want to say at this point, I want to say thank you for not giving up and continuing to fight, because that's enough gut blows right there to just for somebody to say, forget it. I'm done, you know. So thank you for hanging out with us longer. I want to say I appreciate you for that.
Well, Lana, the thing is like after that accident, I knew something had occurred there, right? But I didn't understand what had happened with Carol and with me, because she sat in my seat where I was supposed to be. And so like I had survivor's guilt. So it was going on for a while. So like 3 months after the accident, I decided I was going to kill myself. And I poured out I just got my prescription of painkillers, pulled them all out of my hand, and I was ready to take them. And I just started to reflect on like the accident again and why everything happened. And it dawned on me that this wasn't really what she did was no accident. What dawned on me is that she knew what was going to happen that night, and she knew that she was going to save my life. So she was actually sacrificing herself for me. Now, if you're going to sacrifice a person for a person, right, a soul for a soul, I mean, why would you do that, right? I mean, what is the point of that? Maybe if it was 100 people or something like that, or 1,000,000 people, but you know, that's something beyond me. So I'm thinking if I kill myself, then she's going to die in vain. Then I won't know what the purpose of my life is, or why she did that act of dying, taking my place and dying for me, because she sat in my seat on the way home. And that's the thing that really kept me going in my life through a lot of hard times, is
Mm-hmm.
that thought of trying to figure out why she kept me alive. And I finally realized it a few years ago, when I started writing my book. The reason for my book is so that I can start talking to people and give them faith, hope, and courage to overcome the challenges that they face in their own life. And that if I can overcome everything that I have, you certainly can do everything that you can to overcome what you did as well.
There you go. Awesome. And so you started this book, you said a few years ago?
It took me over 6 years to write it.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
okay.
hard. I had to overcome some doubt. And when I first started to get the idea to write the book, I was in another situation with my wife, and we had a little hiccup in our marriage. And I didn't really care any longer. That was it for me. That was
Oh,
like
okay.
the final straw that broke the camel's back, man. I'm done. Now,
Yeah.
I didn't care if I lived or died or anything,
Wow.
and I just gave up on my job, on my family, on life altogether. So she said, "Why don't you come to counseling with me?" And so I said, "Okay." So I just went. And we both had our own counselor, and mine said, "Oh, you sound a little angry. Why don't we just meet one on one?" And so I met with her, and I told her my whole life story within an hour. And after that, I said to her, I said, "Have you heard of anybody going through as much as I have?" And she said, "Robert, I've been doing counseling for 25 years. I've counseled dysfunctional families. I've counseled addicts, gang members, people that have been in prison. And I haven't heard of anybody going through as much as you have, and you're functioning normally, and that's a credit to you." And then jokingly, I said to her, "Oh, I should write a book, because if people know what I went through, then they'll feel a lot better about their own lives." And then as
Yes.
soon as I said that, it was kind of like this flame had ignited in my gut, and it brought me back to life. It's kind of like when you're lying on the operating table and you get a straight line, beep,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
then they take the paddles and,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
clear, and then beep, 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 beep. That's how it was for me. It brought me back to life. And of course I had to fight through a lot of doubt. And then, I'm going back and forth with this. And one morning I get up, oh, come on, I can't write. I don't know how to write. And so I said, "Okay, God, if you want me to write this book, then let that tree branch fall across the street." And I go, "Well, there's one hanging, but that's not it. That doesn't count. It was already there." So I go to bed, there's no storms or anything. And I get up the next morning, and I couldn't believe what I saw. There's this, not a branch, but a limb this big and about 12 feet long, laying right on the sidewalk directly across the street. And I'm going,
Uh-huh. And
"Oh
you
my
got up and
God,
started writing, right?
that's it, man. That's it. I got to start." Yeah.
Wonderful story, wonderful story. Well, we know Carol was like, "Okay, I'm gonna take your place because you have purpose," and it took you a while to find your purpose, but
Yeah.
I'm glad you got your direction there. So, the book "Suffering Ends When Awakening Begins," it's all your life story.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Oh,
All my
okay.
life story from pretty much the beginning to currently till 2011 anyway, right?
2011, and 2011, is that the story of when you were homeless at 45 with the little babies?
2007, we became homeless, and my wife and four small kids. And it was actually a blessing in disguise. And when we became homeless, it was really kind of, obviously humiliating, being the man, supposed to be the breadwinner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 45 years old, calling my family and friends up and trying to call my mom up for help, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really tough. And the first I got angry, because nobody really wanted to help us.
Mm-hmm.
And, why? You guys are supposed to be my friends, my family. I'd give you the shirt off my back,
Yeah.
it's like, and you say no. Um,
Yeah.
but then I realized later, I mean, all of this started to come together, right? And this is the first time I started to really, I was forced to stop and look at myself and reflect on my life. And a friend of mine gave me the movie The Secret, and that's the kind of really the first thing I watched. And I started watching that, and then I started looking at other stuff, and it still took me a long time, years to turn around. But what I realized is that I would always focus on the negative and what can go wrong instead of the positive and what can go right. So we're the creators of our own reality, and we can create things by default, like what I did, a lot of negative stuff, or we can create stuff by intention. and manifest our life the way that we want to live it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really powerful. And this is what I'm doing now. And I've learned so much from this. And I've had so many incredible experiences with that as well. So
Awesome. Awesome.
definitely the way to go.
Okay. All right. So everything is better and in place right now, right?
Everything is better in place. Yeah. And we're starting to roll. So yeah.
Okay. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to. So, um, well, let me ask real quick. You and the wife are still together?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm assuming the therapy for the two of you has worked out well. Is she progressing as
Yeah.
well too? Okay.
Yeah. She's doing good. Yeah. She's doing well and puts up with me too. And,
Yeah,
so it's
because I was
good.
thinking there could be there's a lot of anger and frustration sometimes
Yeah.
within couples. Like, "Yeah, I had to go through all of this because of you, and you couldn't get this, so sometimes
Right.
there's a lot of, residual damage and stuff like that. But
Sure. Sure.
yeah, that's just, and I knew when I was reading everything, I said, whoo, this is a lot of stuff for somebody to go through, and most of us complain, other people, we
Right.
complain about the little list of things, and then you have the Roberts come along and they say, wait a minute, hold on, let me tell you everything I have been through. You have
Mhm.
nothing to complain about. And like I said, your story just gives a lot of hope and courage and inspiration to people to, pick it up and let's go and do this.
Well, it's really a matter of the way that we're thinking, right? Because most of us, our subconscious mind is programmed. So, and that's what happened to me. So I grew up in a dysfunctional family, like a lot of people today. But
Mm-hmm.
what we don't realize is that even when we're in the womb of our mother, is that all this information and this stuff that we're picking up, and especially when we're born, all the news,
Mm-hmm.
the conversations from our parents, everything, religion, government, all of this stuff is just going directly into our subconscious mind, because our conscious mind has not been developed yet. So our subconscious mind doesn't have the ability to accept or reject information. It just takes it all in
Mm-hmm.
until our conscious mind is developed 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Then it can decide what it wants to let in and not. So if you ever heard of people, oh, I always have this happen to me. I always have bad things in my relationships, or I always have a problem with my boss. These are paradigms, that happen, that occurred in our subconscious mind. So like an operating system on a computer, most of these things are a virus to us. So we have to install a new operating system. So we're not going to get rid of the old model. We just have to create another model to go over it and be able to identify this. I don't know if you're aware of Dr. Masaru Emoto, Messages from Water.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he talks about this a lot with water. He uses music, words, photography. So yeah, it affects water crystals. My favorite is the I can and I can't.
Yeah.
The I can't water crystal is broken. The I can one is full.
Mm-hmm.
And Henry Ford said, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. And it's absolutely true.
Yes, it
And
is.
and the thing is that I'm finding this more and more amazing, because the National Science Foundation wrote an article in 2005 saying that we have between 12 and 60,000 thoughts a day. And out of those thoughts, 80% are negative
Hmm.
and 95% are the day before. So how are people going to change if they're thinking negative thoughts and 95% of those thoughts from the day before? But if you go a step farther and think about it, how did we get to think so negatively? I mean, what does that say about our environment that we're in, about our school, about our government, about our religion,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
What does that say about all of those things? I mean, we need to start questioning this stuff, because something is not right here.
Yeah,
And
and it
this is
just
the
seems to
problem.
it's not to cut you off, but it just
No, go
seems to
ahead.
be a very heavy energy in the atmosphere today. Most of the stuff is more negative, and I don't remember, because I've been around quite a few decades here. I don't remember that as a young girl growing up, it being so heavy and so weighted. But
Right.
everywhere you look, it's just negative, 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 negative.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to maintain a high vibration, because I've been having a lot of experiences with this. And one was just a couple weeks ago in a car accident. And it has a lot to do with creating our own reality, right? And every day I'm learning more and more how powerful our thoughts are. And we can create our own reality. What people don't realize is like who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
We go through hardship, suffering, and adversity in our life for a reason. And the reason is so that we can discover who we really are. Like in
Mm-hmm.
the 5,000-year-old Bhagavad Gita, they talk about when people go through suffering in their life, they don't even question as to why, and humanity begins when we start to ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we go through this suffering, because we're so disconnected with who we really are, right? Is the issue. So we need to be able to reconnect ourselves and find out, first of all, find out who we are. So it's kind of like if you ask somebody, who are you?
People,
Who are you?
that I'm my name or I'm this, but they don't really know who they are.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's like, where were you before you were in your mother's womb? All right.
Mm-hmm.
We were somewhere. And they say that we're created in the image of God, right? Right. So if we're created in the image of God, I can understand that up here. I see an old man with a beard,
Yeah.
right? That's how we
Yeah.
most picture it. But there's something really magnificent about this. And I heard this and it really helped me turn my life around. Now, if we look at it, let's take this a step farther.
Okay.
So some people call it God, some people call it source, some people call it energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if this, so let's go, I got my handy source dough here.
Okay.
Okay. This is my God dough here. So
Okay.
let's say this was God, right? This
Okay.
represented God. So how would we describe God? I think we can all agree that he's omniscient,
Mm-hmm.
all knowing, right? Omnipotent, all powerful, and full of this great benevolent love, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we come from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're created in the image of God, then that means if this is us, then that means we have to have this omniscience, this
Mm-hmm.
omnipotence, and this
Mm-hmm.
great love, right?
True. Very true.
So this is us in our multidimensional self before we come into this physical world.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to function in this physical world, if we want to function as a human being, we need a container, right? And that's where we go into this human body.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go into this human body, it's kind of like our mind is wiped and we get disconnected from who we are. And now all the programming of our subconscious mind comes in and then we get further and further away.
Yes.
So the process to awaken us back up to who we are, to get us to thinking and get us out of the rut that we're in this reality, is
Yes.
to put us through hardship, adversity, and suffering so we begin to question things.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we start questioning stuff, would start the hope that we can arrive back at this conclusion that, hey, there's something really special about you.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. It sounds like a constant conversation I have with a good friend of mine. He's always bah humbug and, grumpy. And, he's had a few bumps along the way in life. And he always gets irritated with me because you're always so positive, Lana, and you're just always so bubbly. I said, but, half of it is your perspective and you just expect bad stuff to happen all the time. So bad stuff happens to you all the time. I expect good stuff to happen. So good stuff happens to me. And he goes,
You got it. You got it.
But that's it. So, Robert, we're going to do the random question of the day, and then I'm going to give you a chance to let everybody know how they get the book and connect with you as well. So we're going to do this. It's totally, totally random. He's chuckling, right? Okay, let's see what we got here. What long shot have you taken that has paid off?
Oh, what a long shot I was taking. Well, I guess it would have to be my book. As a long shot. It's really the first thing in my life that I really started and completed after going through all that I did. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that I did on it was, I actually didn't think I was going to be able to finish writing the thing. That's why it took me 6 years, right? I'm a slow learner and a real slow writer.
Long as you learn, long as you get it, finally.
Yeah. Okay. But the first thing that I wrote on my draft is that at the top of the page, I wrote, I wasn't writing it for me, for the money or for the fame, whatever. That's not it at all. Mm-hmm. The only reason I wrote my book was for the reader, and it was to give people faith, hope, and courage to overcome the difficulties that they have in their own life. So that's the biggest long shot that I've took, and it paid off. And I hope it pays off for other people, that they get my book or they hear my story and they're inspired by it to keep themselves going until they can come to some realization about their own being.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right. So let everybody know how they can pick up the book. And then also, we're not going to call it public speaking, but you stand in front of people and give faith, hope, and courage. So you're a faith, hope, and courage person. So tell everybody how they can get in contact with you if they want to book you for that.
Yeah, they can go to my website, Robert J. Crown,
Okay.
and my book is on my website, robertjcrown.com, or you can go to Amazon. It's also on Amazon as well.
Okay.
And I am on Instagram as Robert Crown.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. I really, because even me personally, and I try to be motivational and inspirational, but sometimes I can wallow in self-pity when something, doesn't go my way. But then I talk to people like Robert and say, Lana, pick your chin up. Like, that's really nothing. It's just, there's better things out there, better days. You just, your outlook and your perspective. And, so just thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Thank you for the information you shared, the energy that you gave. I mean, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. That is all for this week's episode of The Male Perspective. I am your host, Lana Reid, and I will see everybody next time.